I divide the timeline of the modern relationship into three distinct parts. The first part captures the 1970s and 1980s and the early part of the 1990s. I call that a marriage of convenience. They came together, sparked initially by the visit of President Nixon to China in 1972, and then by the visit of Deng Xiaoping to the U.S. in 1979. They offered each other answers to difficult growth problems with U.S. demand for Chinese-produced goods, providing benefits both for the United States and for Chinese producers. Then the relationship deepened into the second stage, which I call codependency, where the U.S. and China recognized the importance of what they provided to each other, with deepening U.S. demand for Chinese products, but also Chinese demand for U.S. treasuries and Chinese demand for American-made exports. And that phase lasted really from the late 1990s through the middle of the first decade of the 21st century. And the third phase is the one that we're in right now. I would call it a conflicted codependency, where both nations still depend on each other, but there's been conflict growing over the way in which they engage, conflict over economics, trade, technology, and conflict over geostrategic security, with both nations taking issue with one another's behavior and posture around the world. And that's a very difficult period that we're in right now, and one that has now turned into the early stages of a Cold War. Right now, the conflict is going from bad to worse. Codependency is a psychological term that talks about human beings that depend too much on one another and lose sight of strengthening themselves from within. Both the United States and China need to do a better job of strengthening themselves from within. When they do that, they're more secure in dealing with one another, and they can move to a more constructive interdependency where they rely on one another to support their growth agendas rather than to create conflicts in their growth agenda. So interdependency is the more constructive nature of the relationship. The first thing that needs to be done is to take steps to rebuild trust between our two countries. The small steps that can be taken to reopen foreign consulates that have been closed in both countries, relax visa requirements in both countries, restart very popular and successful foreign exchange programs. And then we have huge issues that are in both of our mutual interest to resolve: climate change, global health, especially COVID, and cybersecurity. Once we do that, there are two more things that I recommend. One is to lower investment barriers into both nations by adopting a bilateral investment treaty. We were close to concluding negotiations on that in 2016 before the election of President Trump. We need to go back and finalize that deal. That is a pro-growth arrangement that opens up both markets to multinationals from both countries and generates jobs and goodwill. And the third recommendation that I make is to develop a new mechanism to provide a stronger architecture of engagement, establishing a U.S. China Secretariat as a full-time permanent organization staffed equally by Chinese and American professionals located in a neutral country, call it Switzerland, it could be any other neutral country. And the secretariat would work full-time, 24/7, on all aspects of the relationship, from economics and trade to state supported subsidies of industrial and services activity, to dealing with difficult issues like health, climate, cyber, even human rights. So that's my plan. Build trust, lower investment barriers, and establish a new organization for full-time consultation and development of solutions rather than a source of conflict.